Hello, my name is Anna Holder, and I am the Open Data Science, Equity, and Tribal Coordinator with the California State Water Resources Control Board's Office of Information Management and Analysis. Whew, that was a lot of word salad. Sorry about that, folks. Or OIMA, as we call ourselves. I've given a couple of presentations about our statewide surface water ambient monitoring program, or SWAMP, over the past couple of tribal conferences. Today, I want to provide a refresher with some updates and ways for California tribes to engage with SWAMP moving forward, if that's of interest. So over the next 40 minutes or so, I'll provide an overview of the water boards and SWAMP. Something new this year, I want to talk through an adaptive management cycle graphic and some potential pathways of how SWAMP data can be used to inform decisions made in other parts of the water boards. I'll then provide an update and share some opportunities for 3 of our statewide SWAMP programs listed in the table. And I'll provide some contact information for the programs we talk about, and then we'll close for today. All right, let's dive into the water boards and SWAMP overview. First, taking a high-level view of things, it's important to note that the California Water Boards is actually comprised of 10 separate state agencies within the California Environmental Protection Agency, or Cal EPA. I work for the State Water Board, which is represented by the teeny tiny black star over Sacramento, but I work closely with folks in all 9 regions shown in different colors on the map. And the Water Boards has duties that cover water quality, water rights, drinking water, among other topics. At the State Water Board, there are 6 divisions and 8 executive offices. The office in which I work is one of the 8 executive offices, and our SWAMP programs are housed within that office. Many of you might have engaged with other divisions or offices at the State Board, particularly if you've worked with our tribal affairs team or engaged in the integrated report process in the Division of Water Quality. OIMA has a few different broad categories in its scope. We generate and manage our own data through our statewide surface water ambient monitoring programs, or SWAMP, that I'm going to talk a lot more about here in a minute. We support the rest of the organization with making data and information open and accessible to the public. And we have a number of tribal and community engagement efforts that have a nexus with water data topics. And because of the nature of all of this work, we're always looking for and developing new partnerships within the water data community. No matter what project we're part of, we're continuously thinking of ways to use data to advance equity outcomes and to operationalize equity, inclusion, and justice into how we work. One of OIMA's efforts that I'd like to highlight here is our tribal water data initiatives. Projects are designed to build relationships with our tribal partners. Whenever possible, we co-create these projects with our tribal partners, and the projects enable us to lower barriers to accessing water boards data to make it simpler for tribes to use data and resources that are of interest to them. We also like to include our interns and fellows in these projects when we can and when it's appropriate, because they're usually interested in doing something meaningful and impactful during their time with us. Sometimes it's only a couple of months over the summer, or maybe it's a year-long fellowship. These projects always fit that bill. One of these projects is our Tribal Water Data Map and associated user manual. You can see screenshots here on the slide. We've been working on this project with the Big Valley Band of Poma Indians, EPA, and others for the past couple of years, and continue to develop this resource as we can. Its purpose is to be sort of a one-stop shop data resource. Contrary to what its name suggests, if you have recommendations, let me know. It doesn't currently contain data from tribes or tribal data. Rather, it's a collection of data and mapping resources from the water boards and beyond that are of interest to tribes doing water or other environmental work. The user manual is a complement to the map itself that provides context, guidance on how to use the map, and other resources that might be of interest to tribes. At last year's conference, Sarah Ryan, the environmental director for Big Valley EPA, and I gave a presentation and demonstration of the tribal water data map and manual. I've also presented on this project with some of our former interns and fellows and solicited feedback from folks that have attended past California Issues work group meetings during our talks. Recently, Sarah and I have been thinking about when another discussion would fit into a future California Issues work group agenda, so stay tuned, and hopefully we can chat more about this in 2025. If you want to take a deeper dive into the map and learn more about how you might use the resource to support your work before then, I recommend checking out the slides and recordings from last year, and those are linked on the slide. If you do take a peek and have some ideas about how we can improve these resources to make them more useful for you, you can use the QR code or the link on the right side of the slide to take you to a form where you can share your thoughts with us. Switching gears a little bit, we're going to dive a bit deeper into the statewide surface water ambient monitoring program, or SWAMP. SWAMP was established by the California legislature in 2000 to develop a comprehensive statewide surface water quality monitoring program to assess the conditions of California's surface waters and watersheds. As you'd expect, there's a lot to monitor. So SWAMP has been highly collaborative by nature from the start. We facilitate those collaborations and fund monitoring throughout the state. Historically, we've been focused on increasing our understanding of the current status and trends associated with each monitoring program. But whenever possible, when we have the capacity and resources, we also collect data to inform problem identification, diagnostic, and evaluation topics. There are 4 statewide monitoring programs. The Bioaccumulation Monitoring Program monitors contaminant concentrations like mercury in fish tissue to inform folks on which fish are safer to eat in water bodies throughout the state. The Bioassessment Program assesses concentrations of benthic macroinvertebrates, or bugs, and algae to understand the health of our rivers and streams. The Freshwater Harmful Algal Bloom Program, or FHAB program, is primarily a response program at this point that helps inform folks on which water bodies are unsafe to use in the event of a harmful algal bloom, although we are working towards making this a regular monitoring program as well, and we'll talk a little bit more on how we're doing that later. The Toxicology and Contaminants Program monitors contaminant concentrations like pesticides and sediments at the base of watersheds. SWAMP also provides funding to each of the 9 regional water boards so that each region can conduct their own monitoring according to the specific needs of the region. And finally, we have a SWAMP Environmental DNA Meta-Barcoding Monitoring and Analysis Project, or CMAP for short, that is exploring how we might use environmental DNA, or eDNA, to augment, complement, and add to other monitoring programs. For all of our SWAMP programs and efforts, we're thinking about how we can integrate and operationalize diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, and justice into all of the work we do. How can we do our part to support and advance more equitable outcomes for all? Us swampers like to think about how our data can be used with an adaptive management cycle and framework. If we work from the middle of the graphic outward, we start with water quality objectives, which are at the core of all of California's water management programs and provide regulatory basis for the water board's water quality management activities authorized under the Federal Clean Water Act. Moving one step outward, we see 5 phases of the adaptive. Starting with the top left and moving clockwise, we see monitor in blue, assess in teal, plan in green, implement in yellow, and adjust in purple. SWAMP firmly believes that all of these phases require meaningful engagement and partnership with tribes and communities to be impactful and to truly operationalize equity in how we work as an organization. And that's represented by the thick gray arrow surrounding the 5 phases of the framework. On the outer edge of the graphic, we see boxes with example programs or processes for each phase, with SWAMP in the upper left below the We Are Here pin. As with any graphic or framework, this is a highly simplified way of viewing Water Board's process, but it can help us understand generally how all of the different aspects of the Water Boards work together to protect and restore water quality in California. And because the Water Boards is so large and complex, I wanted to break down how some of those programs that were in the example boxes work together to protect and restore water quality in California. One really important thing to note is that each agency and program has its own scope and authority. So working from left to right, we see SWAMP in the monitoring phase. Our role is to conduct monitoring and to generate data. We don't have any regulatory or enforcement authority, which means we depend on our other agency and program partners to use the data in their regulatory and enforcement processes as appropriate. In the assess phase, moving over, we have the State Water Board's Surface Water Quality Assessment Program, which uses SWAMP and other water quality data to develop the California Integrated Report. Similar to SWAMP, this program also does not have any regulatory or enforcement authority when it comes to enforcing water quality objectives. All the integrated report can do is tell us whether those objectives are being met. In the plan phase, we have the regional water boards who do have regulatory authority through their basin planning and TMDL programs to control water quality in their respective jurisdictions. And in the implement phase, we see that both the state and regional water boards may have enforcement authority depending on the program. Just like each program has their own authorities and scope, they also have their own process and timelines for the adjust phase. SWAMP monitoring plans are adjusted annually, for example. The California Integrated Report is published on a 2-year cycle. Regional boards assess their priorities every 3 years during their respective triennial review processes. And the State Water Board strategic plan is updated annually. This is very confusing for many of us, and it can be really difficult to keep track of everything. The main point here is to increase awareness to scope, limits, and timelines for each program so that folks can get a better sense of when engaging with these processes would provide the best return on your investment into that process. I wanted to walk through a couple of potential pathways and examples that SWAMP data might take to be integrated into other water boards processes. We're going to walk through 3 together. The regional board TMDL cleanup programs, how SWAMP data can be used in the tribal beneficial use processes at the water boards, and the development or revision of water quality objectives. So starting with TMDLs. At the top of the slide, you see a linear representation of the different phases from the cyclical graphic. And from left to right, we see that the process starts with data that are generated by SWAMP. The integrated report folks use that data in their assessments to develop their 303D list of impaired waters and the 305B condition report as part of the integrated report. The regional boards in the green boxes then review the results of the integrated report and factor that into their TMDL and other cleanup or restoration program priorities for the next coming years. The regional boards then integrate that into their basin planning process as appropriate. And once adopted into a basin plan, the TMDL objectives can be integrated into permits and other compliance and enforcement mechanisms. Note that this is a simplified pathway represented linearly. Reality is often more nuanced and complex, and the order in which things might be completed once the regional boards begin to utilize integrated report assessment results might vary. Pathway number 2. SWAMP data can be used to inform the tribal beneficial uses process happening throughout the state, or TBU. The TBU process is initiated and led by each regional water board at this time. So it doesn't start with the generation of SWAMP data like it was for TMDLs. And each regional board is at a different phase of updating their basin plans to include TBU definitions and designations. Our hope here at SWAMP is that regional water boards will utilize our SWAMP data to inform these processes. For example, using SWAMP bioaccumulation program data to inform tribal subsistence beneficial use designations. There are a couple of great in-person sessions planned that will discuss the TBU process in much greater detail than I can cover here. And I've provided the day and time and location information I have for each presentation as of the recording of this video, which is 2 weeks before the conference. The agenda might change between now and then, so be sure to confirm using presentation titles and presenter names. I will be at both of these sessions, so I hope to see you there. As noted at the beginning of this section, water quality objectives are at the core of everything we do at the water boards. SWAMP data can be used to inform the development or updating of objectives, particularly as it relates to understanding the status and trends of water quality related to the objectives in question. SWAMP can help us understand where we are now and maybe where we might need to go with the new or revised water quality objectives. Before we dive into key SWAMP program updates, I wanted to flag that the SWAMP bioaccumulation monitoring program's tribally centered training series, which I'll talk more about in a second, had a course in September that went into great detail about how SWAMP and tribal data are considered and used in the California Integrated Report process. If that is something you're interested in, definitely check out the slides and recording linked here and jump to part 3 of the training. Okay, we're in the home stretch. Next, I'm going to go over updates and opportunities for a couple of SWAMP efforts. Specifically, I'm going to talk a little bit more about efforts and opportunities being led by the Bioaccumulation Monitoring Program, the FHAB program, and CMAP, as indicated here with the orange boxes. Starting with bioaccumulation. The statewide SWAMP bioaccumulation monitoring program funds and coordinates the collection and analysis of tissue from fish and sometimes shellfish to understand which fish or shellfish are safer to eat in water bodies throughout the state. The SWAMP bioaccumulation monitoring program was created in 2006 and began monitoring in 2007. There's a lot shown on this timeline. The main thing to take away is that the majority of our monitoring has been conducted in lakes and reservoirs throughout the state, indicated in the dark blue on the timeline. After that, we hit the coastal areas in the blue bars with dots, and we've monitored rivers and streams the least frequency, represented by the light blue pattern bars. Another thing to note is that we're wrapping up monitoring for 2024 now. I think we're finishing this week, and looking ahead over the next 5 years. We'll be focusing on filling data gaps in each water body type, and I'll talk more about how you can engage with that process in a moment. Here we see some maps showing sample locations separated by water body type on the left side of the screen, and an image of our interactive SWAMP data dashboard, which is all of the sampling locations since 2007. The majority of our analysis has been on mercury, selenium, and PCBs in tissue, although other pollutants have been analyzed time to time. And if you're interested in exploring our data, there's a link to the SWAMP data dashboard on the bottom left side of the slide. The main way for folks to engage with the bioaccumulation program is through the Safety Work Group, or STU, as we call ourselves. Together, the SWAMP and the STEW have been working to roll out two main efforts that I think folks here might be interested in. We've been updating and streamlining our feedback process to hopefully make it easier for tribes to engage. And we've been working with a couple of our tribal partners to design and offer a tribally centered training series that walks folks through how we do what we do, in hopes that this will help tribes interested in conducting their own bioaccumulation monitoring or use our data to build capacity and lower barriers to do so. On this slide, we see the approximate timelines for how the bioaccumulation monitoring program solicits review and revision of our annual monitoring plans, what we call our annual feedback process. The key points to note here are highlighted in the table. And around July every year, during our Q3 STEW meeting, we present a draft monitoring plan and put out a call for additional requests or feedback on what folks think we should monitor the following year. Tribes are welcome and encouraged to review our plans and provide feedback if that's of interest. This is an opportunity for folks to tell us what they want us to monitor and analyze. In other words, you get to tell us how you think we should spend our monitoring dollars. We need requests submitted by September 1st every year so that we have time to update permits and get our teams ready to monitor the following year. And we will present the final monitoring plan and priorities around January the following year or before, and monitoring will begin shortly after that. If this is something of interest, our next STEW meeting is scheduled October 30th, the week after the conference, and we'll be discussing a couple of topics that might be of interest. Mainly our final long-term plan for the next 5 years, so you can see which water body types we'll be visiting and when. Our final monitoring plan for 2025, where we'll be starting to fill in data gaps in lakes and reservoirs based on the feedback that we've received over the last year or so. And our partners at the California Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment, or OIHA, they will share how they develop advisories and their priorities for the next year. And they might solicit feedback from meeting attendees. The Bioaccumulation Monitoring Program has been working closely with Sherry Norris, the Executive Director for the California Indian Environmental Alliance, or SIA, and Sarah Ryan, Environmental Director for the Big Valley EPA, to develop a training series that is designed to support California tribes in building capacity in their environmental programs in areas of bioaccumulation monitoring, data analysis, use. Live attendance is free, virtual, and only open to California tribal environmental departments or equivalent tribal programs. And we know everyone's time is precious and limited, so each course is less than 3 hours. And announcements about the series are shared through the Water Board's Tribal Matters or STEW email lists. Sherry, Sarah, our instructors, and I have been developing course content over the past couple of years and started offering courses this year. We have 6 courses in the series, 4 of which have already been offered. If one of the earlier courses is of interest to you and you missed it live, worry not. All of the slides and the recording for each course are linked on this slide and are also on our website. We have 2 more courses left in the series for this year. On December 2nd, we will talk about how we pull bioaccumulation monitoring data from the California Environmental Data Exchange Network, or CEDN, and the SWAMP Data Dashboard, as well as how to analyze and interpret it appropriately. On December 10th, we will hear from our OIHA partners, and they will walk us through how they develop their fish consumption advisories. Registration links for both courses are on this slide, and I'll also have flyers on the Cal EPA table and with me at the conference, so folks can pick those up in person. Moving to FHABs, the statewide SWAMP FHAB program funds and coordinates response, monitoring, and research of harmful algal blooms statewide. Key resources that FHAB team wanted me to share with you were their satellite tool on the left and our FHAB reports map on the right. The satellite tool displays presence of algal blooms and is used to help us understand where blooms may be developing so that we can respond accordingly. The FHAB reports map displays where HABs have been observed and the current advisory associated with each bloom. And there's links to both resources on the bottom of the slide. In addition to the FHAB reports map, which can tell us where HABs are, we also have educational resources and guidance on our FHABs portal about how folks can stay safe around HABs, how HAB advisories are issued, and what the advisories mean. And for those interested in conducting your own monitoring, we have extensive resources, guidance, and training on how to do so, and more on that in a moment. The FHAB efforts that I think folks here might be interested in include our partner monitoring program, pre-holiday assessments, and our extensive training resources. The partner monitoring program involves our SWAMP FHAB program coordinating monitoring with our partners, many of which are California tribes, and funding lab analysis for the monitoring that is conducted by our partners during the harmful algal bloom season. A solicitation for participation into this program is sent out every year around March throughout the California Cyanobacterial and Harmful Algal Bloom Network, or CCHAB, email list. Pre-holiday assessments involve sampling at popular water bodies prior to major holiday weekends shown on the slide, and working with water body managers and the counties to determine the most appropriate signage to inform visitors of potential HABs. Just like our partner monitoring program, our SWAMP FHAB program coordinators coordinate monitoring with our partners, including tribes, and a solicitation for participation into this program is sent out every year around March through the CCHAB network email list. If you want to participate in either of those programs, but don't know where to start when it comes to sampling, look no further. We've got you covered. The SWAMP FHAB program and partners have developed a ton of online resources to help make it easier for folks to do their own monitoring. From training guides and videos to sample shipping information and everything in between, our SWAMP FHAB program leads have provided those resources on their website. And they also wanted me to note, on top of all of that, on top of all the resources available online, we can provide live trainings in person or remotely. Folks just need to reach out to us and we'll figure out a training plan that works for you. Last but not least, I wanted to share a bit about our CMAP project. And as mentioned before, we're exploring how environmental DNA might be used to augment, complement, and add to other monitoring programs at the water boards and beyond. And our project goals and key questions are listed on this slide. This slide shows where data has been collected each year. 2024 is a bit empty right now. I suspect we're waiting on data to come back from the labs. But the kits and analysis methods we use can tell us about what fish, phytoplankton, and benthic macroinvertebrate DNA are detected in the samples. CMAP has only been around for a few years, but as we were developing the project and rolling it out with our partners, we had inclusivity and equity in mind. The majority of our partners are from California tribes, as shown on the bottom of the slide. And when developing this project, we wanted to make it easy for folks to opt in. And that included making time to build relationships with our partners and to talk through data sovereignty and sharing concerns. We pay for the sampling kits and the analysis of samples. We also take on the data management and quality assurance components from data that comes back from the labs. And we've developed a dashboard to share data and resources That includes interactive maps and visualizations of the data that have been collected. There's a screenshot of that on the side of the slide. There's also a partner project gallery for participants to share how they're using their eDNA data to advance their own water quality monitoring goals. And we also have guides and resources to help folks design and implement their monitoring. That was a lot to go over in a short time. Thanks for bearing with me. If you have questions about anything I covered today, please don't hesitate to reach out to me directly via email or phone. As I've mentioned, I'll also be attending the conference in person, and I'd love to connect with folks there too. Contact information for the 3 SWAMP programs we discussed earlier is also on the slide if you want to reach out to those folks directly. If you're not sure who to contact, reach out to me and I'll make sure you're connected with the right folks. Thanks again for your time and attention. Take care, y'all, and I hope to talk with some of you soon.